Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up with me, Kindar, the Tiger Rights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing Chapter 30. Why didn't you tell us? Kirina demanded of Jackal. Tibs hadn't intended to start an argument when he told Jackal about what he'd heard in his father's house. He'd just returned to their room, and the fighter had been there, along with the others, including Maz. What would you have done? Jackal replied. You're already on my father's bad side. There's no point in making it worse for any of you. Karina was the only one angry. Maz was distracted, and Kumdar mulling over the information, probably looking for what fit with the secrets he'd already found out. Tibbs needed to talk with the cleric about those, see if he knew anything that would help him keep Sebastian from causing trouble by the fire. Tibbs was certain that was the man's work. We can help, Kirina said, then dropped onto her bed. We can take whatever your father sends. We've survived a dungeon. A father isn't a dungeon. He doesn't play by any rules. What do you make your father of? What do you make of your father's claim that only you can save your family? Kabdar asked. He said it was red implies a prophecy. Do you have an idea who this she be? Who she is? She might be. That it could have changed your behavior if he told you? Checker rolled his eyes. There is no she. There is no prophecy. It's just a story he made up to try to control me. He was talking to himself, Trina said. Why say that if it's not real? How do I know? Jekyll said in exasperation. Maybe he said it so often he believes it now. What is the story? Condor asked. If you do not mind telling us. Jekyll sighed. Supposedly, when I was born, there was a seer there, and she claimed that I would one day rule the family. That because I would be there, our family would achieve the dreams those before me had. That without me there, our name would be forgotten to the time in the abyss. Is that a thing? As asked, looking up. I thought seers were just in stories. Karina and Kumdar exchanged a look. Karina hesitated. Adventurers with void as an element will sometimes know things out of sequence. There have been tests done, and those who participated have been able to predict the result of Cartelon with enough accuracy that the sorcerers in Amsterdam have an arrangement with the transportation group so that any attendant who shows inclination to prediction will go for testing. What's Cartelon? Mez asked before Tibbs could. Sounds like a game, but I've never heard the name. Kirina rubbed her face. It's a game of chance. A wheel with numbers on it is spun with a die in it. The more faces on the die, the harder the game is, and the more the players can make from the bets. Oh, run dice, Checo said, sitting up. My father owns a few of those tables. Probably rigged. No, I'll probably set up one. We'll give you a random result within the range determined by the dice. One with 6 faces is the simplest game, and will give you one of nearly 400 results. Then it goes up from there. The Amsterdam sorcerers use one with a 100-faced die, so the odds of anyone guessing the result are low enough that anyone able to do it reliably has something special. The only ones to have done it have void as their element. She looked about to add something. But, Thorndar took over. While I do not benefit from having read what sorcerers have done to study it, I have heard stories. If those are to be believed, anyone with a talent for predicting what will happen does not live very long. But if they know what's going to happen, he said, can't they avoid what's going to hurt them? The stories say those people go insane, the clerk said. They turn into a raving lunatic, is what those stories say. It's more that the more accurate the adventurer is at predicting what will happen, Kirina picked up, the quicker their mind deteriorates. The researchers describe it as them losing touch with the now so that they can't function anymore. Now I know my was lying, Jekyll said. He claimed that she was there for every one of his children being born. He stood. Come on. I'm done talking about this without at least some ale in me. Let's go to the inn. Once I'm numb, you can go back to talking about visions and adventures going mad. Tibs studied the barrels lining the wall. Drinking the ale had proved to be more of an adventure than usual, as, for the first time since Tibs started drinking there, they had bad ale. A bad barrel happened, Roosevelt reassured them, but when Jekyll pressed, he admitted this was the seventh barrel in their cellar that had been bad, that had turned out to be bad. Jekyll had been quick to claim his father was responsible, but Miles pointed out there was no way to open a barrel to add anything that would make the ale go bad. As part of learning to be a noble, his family had sent him to work in a brewery, so he explained how barrels were sealed and how they were stored on their side. He'd gone into the reason, but Tibbs had been thinking of other things that led him to be in the inn cellar that night instead of on the roof. Tibbs had known he could get in with no one noticing. What he wanted to know was if anyone else could do it. He wasn't impressed. Oni Garland worked that night. He was the strongest and meanest looking of Crossa's brother, so his presence was enough to keep the nighttime drinkers from causing trouble. But he was also the cook and server, which meant that with only a little patience, someone could get close to the kitchen, then in and through the door leading to the cellar without being noticed. Leaving would only require the same. So, Sebastian could pay someone to get in. Then what? As Mez had explained, the barrels were on their side, held in place with wooden blocks, and stacked 3 high, the highest the cellar ceiling allowed. They were made of wooden slate held in place with metal rings, just like the rain barrels. You couldn't remove a ring without the ale escaping. You couldn't remove a slate without leaving evidence it had been tampered with. Joseph reassured Jekyll that none of the barrels had been tampered with. It would take someone with wood as their element, Tibbs decided, or someone with water to hold the ale in place while they removed the rings. Only even that would leave marks as the metals, you know what? Did I say that the wooden place made of wooden slate held placed by metal rings? So here I don't have to say metal again. As the ring scraped against the wood, he sensed the liquid in the barrel, and the mix of essence there felt the same as that in the tankard he drank from. Water, earth, air, fire in varying degrees, and he was surprised to sense a little corruption. There were more essences. He noticed that everything, even what he thought of as being an element, had a lot of essence within them. Had more essences within them than just that one. What did corruption have to do in ale? What did corruptions do? His only experience with it was dawn, and when he had corruption in his essence. He thought it was a bad element, but while there was something not entirely trustworthy about the element, they had been friendly. Every barrel had corruption in it, but Tibbs figured that if he added more, no matter what its purpose was, it would make the ale go bad. So, had Don done this? No, Tibbs didn't believe that. For as much as an asshole as the sorcerer was, he liked the inn. More than that, Don thought of the town as his too. He'd hurt someone in it that bothered him, but the town itself? No. Actually, no. Did Sebastian have an adventure with corruption? He hadn't sensed an element in anyone he'd seen near the man's house, or those he knew worked for him, but Jekyll had made it clear his father was as rich as some nobles, so he could pay one to come and ruin the ale. Or he could have an item that let him do it. Tibbs hadn't been able to work out what the woven items Sebastian wore did, but some had corruption as part of their weaves. Complex items seemed to have a little of all essences, just like everything else. Left with only maybes on all the questions he had, Tibbs snuck out of the inn and went roof running. He needed He needed some certainties to balance out the maybes, and the best way he knew how to accomplish that was to break into a house or two, and tonight they were going to be nobles' houses. Can I sense make a lock? Tibbs asked Alistair. His teacher sighed. Please focus, Tibbs. I am. They were seated on the floor of the training room within the guild's building, eyes closed. Had been for too long, as far as Tibbs cared for. I'm feeling my reserve and pushing the essence against the edge of it. I don't know what's supposed to happen, so I'm asking you a question. What it's supposed to happen, Alistair said, his tone strained, is that you need to work on how to get your essence to seep through the border of your reserve into your body. One of the aspects of being Rho on your way to Lambda is to get your essence to suffuse your body. Wouldn't it be easier by just overfilling my reserve? Tibbs asked, thinking back to what had happened when he absorbed Bardic's essence. That could be done. I expect it would make it easier. But remember what I told you. Overfilling your reserve is dangerous. It had been painful, but nothing bad had happened because of it. Well, other than being drenched in corruption, but that had been Bardic's doing, not his reserve spilling over. As being about to move about able. There's another word. Able is a word that able and about are a set of words that I tend to flip, just like was and wanted. Don't know why. Does being able to move essence in my body let me have more of it? That would have been nice to work on earlier. Alistair chuckled. No, you're not getting a larger reserve of this. What suffusing your body does is reinforce it. Get it ready for the next change. I thought Rho was about learning that I didn't have to just repeat how I thought Rho was about learning that I didn't have to just repeat how. Repeat. I didn't have to just. I thought Rho was about learning that I didn't have to just use essence. This should be way, not was. The way I was told to. You already know that. Then when are you going to teach me how to do more? When you're ready. Slide. So, can essence be made into a lock? What do you want to know? There's a house with essence woven through the windows and doors. It seems like we've just answered your question. Tibbs opened his eyes. How do I get through it? You get the key. Alistair's legs were cross-trained with both feet over his calves. Tibbs had tried, but it was painful. I can't get the key. Then you can't get through it. So they're the perfect lock. Tibbs didn't believe in those, but now you needed to keep in mind that what essence can do. Alistair glared at Tibbs. That is not what we are working on, Tibbs. It's what's on my mind, he smiled. I'm not going to be able to focus on anything else. There are times, Tibbs, when I seriously believe you do not wish to improve your essence. Tibbs shrugged. I'm inquisitive. I can't help it. Tibbs raised an eyebrow. Alistair raised an eyebrow. The word was in a book Kieran was having me read. He liked the word, so he'd been practicing saying it, and I'd waited for the perfect time to use it. Maybe I should get you a book explaining the principle of essence etching versus that of weaving, his teacher said, hints of a threat in his tone. Maybe he should have used the word with someone else. I'd rather you tell me, Tim said casually, but he could tell Alistair saw his discomfort. It hurt less. He rubbed his temple for emphasis. It'll hurt regardless once you start working on it. It is a complicated process to understand, but one you need before you can progress. You can progress? Yeah. Tibbs nodded. So the essence law. It's perfect? Alistair rubbed his temple and gave Tibbs an annoyed look. No. There are no locks that can't be defeated, but one of those will be as close to it as it's possible to get. He closed his eyes, took a few breaths, then when he opened them, the annoyance was gone. When his teacher spoke, it was as an instructor again. A lock will always have weaknesses. Tell me what could be the weakness of one of those made of essence. The key, Tibs said immediately, since if he had that, he could easily bypass it. He thought about it. The person who has it, I could trick them into opening it for me. Alistair nodded and waited. Tibs shook his head. He was certain it had other weaknesses, but he couldn't think of any. If a lock like that is so good, why don't every house have them? That's the only house I found with them. Even the nobles rely on latches instead of essence. Setting aside arrogance as a reason, Alistair chuckled, and Tibs could envision a noble thinking that they were too good for an essence lock. That window you notice, it's now basically a magical item. Oh, was that was one thing Tibs hadn't thought about. Yes, and as I've explained, those are difficult and expensive to make. The more essence used, the more difficult, and therefore the more expensive such a lock would be. I'm surprised even one of the noble has gone to that extent. Considered something. Could you tell how many essences were used in the lock? Tibs gave Alistair is, are you really asking that question? Look, then remembered how his teacher liked to work. Is there a way I can tell what other essences are? Right now, you can only differentiate those essences you had. Alistair smiled. Remember how I told you that with enough training, you could disrupt someone else's essence, even if it isn't your own? That's because with that level of experience, you learn to tell minute differences between the essences. With enough skill and practice, you could tease about what essence compose a weave. Of course, the more complex the weave, the harder that will be. It's all that mixing of essence, right? Along with the fact that a complex weave is also denser than simple ones. The strands of essence are packed so tight that it makes telling them apart even harder. One of the main reasons they aren't used is that they aren't used is that they are more. One of the main reasons they aren't used is that they are more than even a noble will need. A mechanical lock can be quite complex, enough they will stop all but the best thief. This one went to this expense makes me question what they might be expecting of a dungeon town this new. Well, they know rogues have essence, yes, but they'd also know that no one who is currently running the dungeon will have the training to be able to do more than sense there is essence used in the window. And being able to use an element will not make getting through such a lock possible. He extended his hand, and water lines formed over it. A simple weave uses multiple essence to stop you because you only have one of them. He broke the water line with a finger. You plug this line, but the rest is still there to trigger when you break them. Most rogues lack your training to be able to even tell there would be more essences, so they'd be caught. That noble should consider that to be enough. He extended his hand and mimicked the pattern. Then, taking a chance, he added more lines until they became nearly impossible to tell apart. It felt more like this. That's overkill. How would someone who wanted to get into that house do it? Alistair narrowed his eyes. Don't even think of attempting it. I'm not, Tibs replied reflexively. Just curious. Trying it will end up killing someone. Probably you, Tibs. Could you do it? I'd need a team. How large would depend on how many essences are used. I need at least one person who can tell them apart. So a sorcerer, then it would depend on what they tell me. All the others would be rogues? Alistair's suspicious expression turned pensive. Ideally, but I don't know rogues that could cover every element. Fortunately, because of how teams are built, nearly every class will pick up something from their rogues, so it's just a question of finding someone with the element and enough knowledge to be helpful. Helping break a lock, it doesn't require the kind of skill that needs a lifetime to learn. Does that answer your question? Tibs nodded. He wasn't getting into Sebastian's house any further than the fireplace, unless he found it extinguished. And he expected that even with the weather never being so cold as to require fire all the time, the man wouldn't let it go out. Unless he could make a team of rogue he trusted with his secret. Can we go back to your training then? You won't be able to reach Lambda without that. How will I tell when I've managed it? Tibbs asked, setting the question of Sebastian aside for the moment. Tibbs, Alistair warned, then seemed surprised that the question was on topic. Once you've suffused your body with water essence, you will take on some of its characteristic. Your motions will be smoother. You'll be harder to hold. Stepping out of bonds will be easier. All right, Tibbs closed his eyes. That settled that worry at least. His body was already suffused with an essence, and that wasn't water. He wouldn't be able to. He wouldn't cause his team to break up. And that concludes chapter 30. If you are enjoying this, please hit the like button. If you want to know when the next one's going to be, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read more of the story, maybe a little ahead, or start with book 1, you can do so on Royal Road. It's free. If you want to support me, read more of this story. I'm usually about, depending on the tier, I'm up to 8 or 9 chapters ahead of what's currently posted on as part of the Read and Correct. And you can also read a lot of other stories I've written. You can do that on Patreon. And if you want to watch me do these live, I do that every Tuesday morning. And the rest of the week, I write. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.